What is your best or worst don't meet your heroes story? Story 1. I met Weird Al and got starstruck and didn't know what to say to him. I finally blurted out, "I know you probably hear this a lot, but I'm a huge fan." He smiled and responded, "I do hear that a lot, but I've never heard it from you." Made my day. Story 2. Went to see Penn and Teller in Vegas, and one of their magic tricks during the show involved the audience. The trick worked for everyone in my family, but not for me. Now they're well known for meeting people after their show, so we stayed, got autographs and photos with them. Even Teller was talking. They couldn't have been nicer. Penn asked me what did you think of the show, so my stupid mouth just fired back, "Your audience trick didn't work." He then asked my family, "Did it work for you?" They all nodded, and with an enthusiastic yes, without missing a beat, he turns to me. "Well, there's the problem, you're in." Getting personally insulted by Penn was the high point of that Vegas trip. Story 3. At a corporate training session, we had all the best mechanical engineers in one place, and I know one dude from reputation. One of those guys that could take a downed helicopter and get it flying again with very little time and spare parts. His record was amazing. He raked in huge sums over this reputation. I found out he'd sign off riskier projects under other people's names. So if it turned out to not be doable, his reputation would remain intact. And most of those miracle patchworks that I mentioned would be at the cost of tearing down other functional equipment. So he'd take a vehicle with torn too, boast about how he'd put it back together, then proceed to take parts from another of the same kind, but with minor damages and still working, break it down, and use that to repair his pet project, effectively breaking 4 vehicles to repair one, and make himself look good. Story 4. I worked as a cashier in a state-line Nevada casino in the early 80s. Part of our training included a warning that Bruce Dern often gambled in the early morning, and he did not like to be recognized. I've been a huge Bruce Dern fan since Silent Running, and it was enough for me to spot him from across the room. One day I'm training a new hire and Mr. Dern came to our window. I had forgotten to warn my trainee about him. After the trainee cashed out his chips, he says, "Has anyone ever told you that you look just like Bruce Dern?" Mr. Dern grins and says, "I get that a lot," and walks away. Made my day. Story 5. Not sure this is a never meet your heroes story, but it's a great example of why you shouldn't always listen to that advice. I met Terry Farrell, the actress who played Jadzia Dax on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, at a convention Q&A session when I was 15. She and another DS9 actress, Nana Vister for the Trekkies out there, were up on stage answering questions, and there were 2 lines leading to a microphone on either side of the stage. Well, suddenly on Terry's side, the mic went out, and without skipping a beat, Terry got off the stage and started holding out her own microphone to people so they could keep asking questions. Terry even gave a hug to a 5-year-old girl ahead of me in line. I got to the front, and there I am, an extremely shy 15-year-old, arm's length away from my childhood hero, in front of several hundred people. I managed to tremblingly squeak out that she is my favorite character in all of Star Trek, and before I can say another word, she gives me a big hug. I ended up asking her about her favorite episode. Her answer was Blood Oath for those curious, and went back to my seat. My dad had also bought me a photo op with her later that day, and when I got there, she exclaimed something to the effect of, "Oh, I remember you," and immediately pulled me into another big hug for the photo. I still have that photo, as well as an autographed photo of her character. Words cannot describe how much that encounter impacted me. I never expected someone who probably met thousands of fans that day to show so much care to one awkward teenager who just wanted to meet her hero like everyone else. Jadzia Dax is everything I wanted to be growing up. She is kind, confident, smart, funny, and adventurous. I still want to be all those things, but more than anything, I hope I can learn to exude even half the kindness that Terry Farrell does. So yeah, sometimes your heroes really are heroes. Story 6. I met Will Wheaton at a big sci-fi con a few years ago. It was like halfway through the 3rd day and he'd been signing stuff for hours. I got to the front of the line and he jumped out of his chair in excitement and yelled, "Are those batleth earrings? So cool!" He then proceeded to sign my dorky old TNG comic, with Wesley Crusher on the cover, of course, and we put an earring on the cover so he could take a photo of Wes with it. We talked about open source software and EFF. Whole interaction took 3-4 minutes, but he was just totally there for it, despite having 100 other people he'd have to interact with. He later included the photo in his blog. Story 7. Had the weirdest interaction of my life with a musical actor back in 2016. So I was 17 and had a really bad day. I just came from a childhood friend's funeral, but my family didn't want to skip the musical since we had booked months ago and the tickets were expensive. So they dragged me along hoping it would make me feel better. It actually did, mainly because of a solo this musical actor had, which made my day a lot better. So at the end of the night, I looked up his name, mentioned him in a harmless tweet praising him for his talent. He liked the tweet, followed me on Twitter, and then we didn't have any interaction for almost a year. Until my 18th birthday, when I posted a picture of a gift with a caption like, "Happy birthday to me, finally of age," or something similar. He sent me a private message congratulating me, and I was super excited that someone as popular as him would talk to me. So I thanked him and we messaged a bit back and forth, actually getting along quite well and sharing some interests. Looking back, the messages were already kind of flirty, but I was shy and innocent. And also I was 18 and he was almost 40, so I didn't want to see it and just ignored it. So at one point we became friends on Facebook since messaging there was nicer than on Twitter, and we messaged quite frequently for about 2 weeks. One day we messaged for hours, so he was like, "Hey, why don't we talk on Skype? Wouldn't that be nicer than writing?" You possibly see where this is going, but I didn't. Please don't blame me for being naive. I was just super young and starstruck. Of course I said yes. He called me and we talked for about half an hour about his job, about our day, just everything. And without any notice, he just started taking his clothes off and told me that now it was my turn to do the same. Reality hit me like a brick, and after just staring at my screen like a deer in headlights at a car for a minute, I hung up and decided that maybe I should stop idolizing people. Haven't heard from him since, except for a short sorry, but learned a lot from that. Also, this is a very fun story to tell at parties. Story 8. I never ask celebrities for selfies as it's pretty cringe, and I know they don't want to do it. I've always been a huge fan of Slash, and I met him backstage at a Velvet Revolver gig, and I thought I'd break the selfie rule just this once. I pounced on him and asked for a picture, and he said, "Off, man." Somehow that was better than a photo, but I was still snubbed by a hero. Story 9. I have loved Watchmen, the graphic novel, for many years. In July, I worked in a pop culture convention, and one of the guests was John Higgins. I was wary of him, since I was mistreated by many artistas. Most of them were unknown, but I treated all of them with the same respect. Last day, my shift had ended, and I decided to risk it, and went to speak with him. He was lovely, couldn't have been nicer, and talked with me for a while. Gave me an autograph and took a selfie with me. Story 10. I went on some dates with a guy I didn't realize was one of my favorite science writer authors. Like, I knew he had the same name, but I didn't realize they were the same guy. Turns out he was a real and some other things. It ended when I was in a car accident, and I called him to let him know, and he said, "So, how is that my problem?" Story 11. Met Tobey Maguire at a fan meet and greet back in 2013. I think it was a promotion for The Great Gatsby movie. Looking back, I genuinely felt bad for him because everyone kept asking him about Spider-Man and not The Great Gatsby. He called off the event before I got his autograph because some wanted him to talk about why Sony canned him for Andrew Garfield. As an adult looking back now, I see why actors get pissed with like that. I think with certain actors who are most commonly associated with one role in particular, it sucks knowing that no matter what future roles you take, someone in the theater would point at you and say, "Hey, isn't that Spider-Man?" I've always sympathized with Tobey because of that reason. Story 12. When I was in junior high, I wrote a paper on Thor Heyerdahl and Easter Island. In high school, I wrote another about his Reed boat Atlantic crossing attempt. I went to college to study anthropology, both because of him and Indiana Jones. I was 15, give me a break. Through a series of familial misadventures, my money for grad school vanished, and I joined the military to get the cash to finish. While stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, I was with a buddy walking along the pier when I see this gorgeous three-master sitting up ahead. I want to go look at it and see it's flying a Norwegian flag. I get closer and start taking with one of the girls on the ship. She says they're college students, and this is sort of an foreign study credit, sailing the ship from Bergen all the way around to South America. That sounds amazing. As I'm looking around, I notice that the ship is called the Heyerdahl. I comment that I wrote papers on Thor and got my degrees based on my admiration. She asked if I ever met him, and I just laughed. I was a poor kid from western South Dakota. What were the chances I'd ever get to meet him? She said he was right over at a cafe less than a block away. I remember with unbelievable clarity. He was sitting on a little white bench outside the place with a disposable cup of something with a book in his hand. There was a small table and chair not far away, and I could only just sit and look. He looks up about a minute or two later, sees me and says, "I'm sorry, but are you all right?" I didn't even realize I was crying. Over the next hour and a half, I talked and listened to him, watched him smile and talk about how adventure still existed. You just had to find them and live them whenever you could. He invited me to visit him if I was ever in Norway, and we both laughed at that. When he died in 02, I bawled my eyes out. I live in Atlanta now, and a little over a year ago, my wife and I went to Charleston for a few days. After dinner one evening, we were walking along the pier, and I saw where the ship had been tied up. Nothing there at that moment. Then I turned to where the cafe was and saw the bench. I sat where he sat for a while. Story 13. I met John Cena when I was 16. I was a massive fan of him since he started in the WWE. It was my first time ever really meeting a celebrity. Nothing exactly bad happened, but I made a joke. Can't remember it now, but it wasn't inappropriate or anything. And he just sort of looked at me straight-faced. His manager he was with laughed at least. I was a bit embarrassed and didn't want to meet another celebrity again for years till I met Jason Momoa by accident. He was awesome. Story 14. When I was 5, 6 Batman was the only thing I watched on TV. My mom took us to see Adam West at a store somewhere. While waiting in line for so long, Mom went to ask an employee how much longer we had to wait. She overheard Adam West say, "When are we done here? I got to get away from all these kids." Story 15. Wife took the kids to Pittsburgh to see Def Leppard. The night before, they're in a restaurant when an older, one-armed guy walks in. Turns out it's the drummer for the band. They chatted him up and got a selfie. He was happy to see teenagers still liking his music. Story 16. Early 80s NYC club, my wife's friend's story, call her Amy. Amy was clubbing somewhere in Manhattan, next in line for the bathroom. Christopher Reeve and a friend chat her up. She is starstruck completely. Amy's turn comes up. Reeve and friend ask if they can join her to do cocaine. Her heart breaks a little. Superman does coke. Story 17. I've worked in the entertainment industry since 2010, and in that time, I've been lucky enough to cross paths with some awesome people and unlucky enough to find out who are S behind the scenes. Best? Working as a lighting tech for WWE in Sydney about 10 years ago, I had quickly run outside for a smoke near the end of the show while I had some time. Back of house is pretty dark. There's not a lot of normal lights, mostly blue lights, just bright enough that you can find your way around. This is so there isn't bright light shining from behind any curtains or tunnels facing into the venue through the show. I had about 10 minutes to get back inside, run around to where my crew were waiting, and get them standing by to pack up the show once it ended. As I ran into one of the tunnels towards my crew, I bumped shoulders with someone walking out towards the loading dock car park. Immediately, I just say, "Sorry, mate, didn't see you." I look up and it's John Cena. He literally tousled my hair, chuckled, asked my name, shook my hand, and then walked off. I physically ran into John Cena and told him I didn't see him. The realization of that being what happened once I got to my crew left me feeling all sorts of cringe. But he was polite, took the time to actually acknowledge me, and seemed sincere. Worst? Now that's a hard one. It's a tie between Slash from GNR taking nearly 2 hours to rehearse guitar licks and being angry at everyone around him, saying he sounded and it was dragging on. Nobody wants to hear the opening notes to Sweet Child O' Mine played poorly over and over like it's a guitar lesson. Bam Margera being a cunt to people and a drunken sleazebag to underage girls at a festival. Mind you, everyone paid for tickets to meet the artists at these festivals, all proceeds going to charity. And this was up there taking all the attention and just genuinely being a mess of a human. That being said, though, he did promise to find us in the pit later at one of the smaller stages, and he kept that promise by running through my group of friends and yelling, "Get in there, pussies," before disappearing into a circle pit. Mariah Carey stepped out of her dressing room in a towel to stop myself and another crew member moving cases to a truck mid-bump out of her show, demanding we take her bags to her car that's waiting. When we told her sorry, we can't do that as it's not our job, and we aren't cleared to even be communicating with her, she basically snapped and said we wouldn't work on her next show in another state. I'm guessing she assumed we were touring crew. We were not. So no S given. Carry your own bags, wench. I'm sure if I really thought about it, there would be better and worse memories. But for now, this is what came to mind. Story 18. I've loved Alan Cumming since the very start of his career. I saw his first TV appearance with Forbes Masson. Fast forward almost 30 years, I've moved to the USA and met my now husband, who casually mentioned that he knows another Scottish guy. Yup, you guessed it, Alan Cumming. We met up with Alan when he came to town to perform, and despite him just coming off stage and exhausted, he was incredibly friendly and delighted to meet me and the kids. We get together anytime he's in the area and have met up with him in NY. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met, and he adores our kids. He has sent them wee videos on their birthday a few times too. Just a wonderful guy. Story 19. I'm a big fan of Brian Blessed. You don't need to know why. I got the chance to go to a Quanda with him, present from my brother. Large enough crowd on the boat, and at one point he strolled down the aisle shaking hands, and I got to shake his hand and thought that was great. I wasn't expecting anything more, but later on, he posed for photos and I queued. I wasn't even that interested in a selfie with him. I just wanted to shake his hand properly and try to say how much I admired him. When I got to the front of the queue, I shook his hand and said, "They say you should never meet your heroes, but you're my hero, Brian, and I'm very glad I met you." His reply is between me and him, but he's a wonderful human being. Story 20. I've been a huge LeBron James fan since I was 5. In 2012, my dad surprised me with tickets to a Miami Heat game, and I was thrilled to see my idol in person. As a 9-year-old, I felt like I was in heaven when I had the opportunity to get closer to him. Unfortunately, my excitement turned to disappointment when LeBron seemingly ignored me, even when I presented him with a jersey, and he just looked at me like I was nothing. His indifference toward a young girl like me made me question the positive portrayals of him in the media. It's hard to reconcile the image of a superstar who would dismiss a child's enthusiasm. Story 21. When I was a kid, I was super into Broadway and musical theater. My dream was to be in Broadway, so for my 9th birthday, my mom got us tickets to see Wicked on Broadway in New York with most of the original cast. This was a huge trip for us, as we lived on the West Coast. My mom had mentioned to someone working at the show that it was her daughter's birthday, and that Idina Menzel was my hero. This was before Frozen, and before she was as big of a name as she is now. Somehow, this person brought us backstage after the show to meet the cast. Everyone backstage was very kind and sweet to me, except Idina Menzel. Kristen Chenoweth was super awesome, and Joey McIntyre was really nice and trying to cheer me up, but Idina wouldn't come out of her dressing room. I got to hear her tell Joey, through her dressing room door, that she didn't care about some kid and to leave her the alone. 9-year-old me was crushed, and even though the others were kind and did their best to salvage the situation, I lost interest in musical theater after that. Story 22. Worst. Joss Whedon was in line for autographs when he started writing for Astonishing X-Men, and the line was hours long. He took time with everybody else to answer their questions and be a person. Didn't even look up at me or make eye contact. Best. Max Brooks. What an amazing guy. He was late for his signing at an event I was at, but I was the only person who was in line for it. Everybody else bailed because he was late. Once he arrived, he apologized profusely, and we had an almost 30-minute time chat just about his book and his process. He personalized in his autograph in my copy of World War Z and was a great person to converse with. Honorable mentions for being great. Nichelle Nichols, Walter Koenig, Amber Benson, Peter Mayhew. Story 23. Ever since I was a kid, I loved the look of the 1980s Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham, the CD body style, last of the truly full-sized Cadillacs with the long tail, vertical brake lights, vinyl top, and the Cadillac crest flying over the hood. In college, I wound up buying one used that was in decent shape, and up close, the build quality was a real letdown. Everything seemed loose and rattly. The ride wasn't anything special, and the 307 V8 engine was utterly gutless, even for a Malaise-era engine. With a bulky carburetor and tiny intake ports, it struggled climbing hills or passing. A lot of generic 80s economy cars would have beat it in a drag race. Years later, I switched to Oldsmobile and found myself an older model 98 Regency with an Olds 350 V8. And not only does it run circles around the Cadillac for torque, but it's been extremely reliable even at 45 years old now, and the overall build and road mannerisms seem much more solid. It made me fully realize how long Cadillac has been coasting on its name. Story 24, not mine, but a friend's. Jason Alexander, George from Seinfeld, came to give a guest lecture on acting at the university my friend attended. My friend was on his way to class when he ran into Jason Alexander, who had just finished up his lecture. Instead of saying, "You're George from Seinfeld," my friend said, "Holy crap, you're Jason Alexander?" Jason Alexander heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Nobody remembers my name. It's always George this, Festivus that. Know what, kid? Want to get lunch together?" And my friend says, "Oh, sorry, I'm late for class," and took off for biology. He gets to class, sits down, and suddenly realizes he just turned down lunch with Jason Alexander. Don't meet your heroes, because sometimes you're really, and they'll see it. Story 25 was kinda into ski racing as a kid and was working with my instructor when he held me back in the lift line a chair only to catch the next ride. Lo and behold, it was Picabo Street with us on the chair. My little preteen soul was in awe. She was badass, pulled a full 6-inch sub out of her jacket and started chowing down and chatting away about eating enough, racing, skiing, life, etc. I can barely remember what she said. I couldn't stop staring. She took 2 runs with us. I could barely pretend to keep up, of course, but she was so nice. I was in awe, amazing person. Still think back about how she was just so cool. What an incredible experience. Great role model. Story 26. I'm a real nerd about state and local history. One of our former governors is from the same community as my dad's family. The man always had a reputation for being hardworking, trustworthy, and genuine, and a friend to the regular people. But the times I have seen and spoken to him at different events, he comes across as completely false. Everything about him says politician, from the sugary voice he uses to talk to people that's so friendly, it's almost hostile, to the way he code switches depending on his audience. At a history lecture attended by educated people, he pronounced library correctly. At a reunion day for attendees of the old community school, mostly elderly and working class, he said, "Lie, Bree." Both brief conversations I've had with him were almost exactly alike, and felt as if he had conversation templates in his head. Both times I mentioned who I was descended from that he knew as a child, and both times he said, "Exactly. Oh yes, a fine Christian man." It felt like a stock response he probably gives everybody. While I'm glad he was never outright nasty to me, I find his falseness incredibly demeaning. I understand why he was a one-term governor and don't get why he has always been painted as this paragon of statesmanship. Story 27. When I was a kid, there was a big scouts meet in the east of England with activities like rafting and archery. The main event was supposed to be Bear Grylls, who was chief scout at the time, attending to meet and do some activities with us. It got to the time he was supposed to be there but didn't turn up, so we started the activities without him. Just when people had given up hope, a helicopter landed and we were all pushed into a marquee tent to greet him. He came in, gave a brief maybe 20-second speech about how nice it was to see so many scouts, then got into the back of a car and sped off. Story 28. A promoter for a large touring company in Australia, founder of another record company, was someone I really admired in the AOS heavy music scene. He was everything I wanted to be. Ran into him at a Polaris gig once last year, and he ignored the out of me. Turns out he had been previously talking about me to one of the supporting band members that I was friends with. I lost a lot of respect for him that day. Story 29. I was married to my first husband, and one day we went to a funky used record store to see what we could find. My husband held out a CD from someone we'd never heard of that had a weird, intriguing cover on it, and that was on a record label that we respected a lot, so we took a chance and bought it. We went home, put it on, and became immediate hardcore fans. Both of us would have said that he was our favorite artist, though he was so obscure and cult level that we never really expected to be able to see him or anything. Which is why it was a complete surprise that 6 years later, and 2 years after husband and I divorced amicably, I ended up meeting and marrying this very same musician. This was a terrible mistake, for sure the worst I've ever made. But one of the most tragic things about it is that I lost a bunch of music that was so important to me and carried me through so many times in my life. They say don't ever meet your heroes, and that may be true, but definitely don't marry them, good Lord. Story 30. The good. I met Stan Lee at a convention. He was signing books. To let you know how long ago this was, he was doing it for free. I said, "You must get tired of having to sign so many autographs." He just smiled a big smile and said, "No way. I love it. My fans are so important to me." The bad? Went to a trade school to learn makeup. A famous makeup artist was a guest teacher there. Think classic 80s horror. One student told him they needed to leave early for something. He said fine. I then walked up to him to tell him how much he had influenced me. First thing he said when I approached him was, "I guess you're too busy to stay for my class too, huh?" I felt kind of hurt that he was so negative. He spent the rest of the lecture talking about all his achievements, which were all over 15 years in the past. Story 31. When I was 13, I had the honor of meeting President Obama. It was not what I expected. I will probably get hate for this comment, but he was very cold when he saw my excitement. Perhaps he was busy. I'm not sure, but it was not the best experience considering he was president at the time. He did shake my hand, which I'm grateful for. I remember him asking in a cold/rude tone if I was okay, since I was clearly shocked/excited. I was surprised because I'm sure he meets regular people all the time. Story 32. I've always liked Karen Allen. She was at a local Comic-Con, but I didn't have the money to pay for an autograph, so I didn't want to wait in line just to say hello. Sometimes you can do that, but most of the time the con frowns on it. I was walking past her table in my giant pumpkin monster costume, and my friend said, "Karen Allen just snuck a picture of you." She saw my costume, pulled out her phone, and took a photo. The next day I walked past in a different costume, and she wasn't at her table, but her handler was another friend of mine, so I went over to say hi. Just as I got there, Karen popped up from behind the table. She had been bent over, getting something out of her bag. Her eyes got big, and she said, "Oh, hi there." My handler friend introduced us and said I was the big pumpkin guy from the day before. She was a delight, and it was really nice to meet her. Story 33. I was at a Comic-Con in Dallas alone once and sitting off to the side on the ground because it was a lot and I suffer from crowd anxiety. John Romita Jr. saw me and had me sit with him in his booth for about an hour. I was a gigantic fan, and it almost had the opposite effect, panic, but he was so nice to me that I ended up being fine. I have a selfie with him that I took on my laptop since it had the best camera I owned at the time. Story 34. I was a huge science nerd in high school, so of course I idolized Bill Nye. I thought he was amazing for how he made science more accessible to everyone. My love of science led to me becoming an astronomy major in college during the late 90s and very early 00s. At that time, One of my astronomy professors let me know that Bill Nye had been hired to be the main speaker at my university's engineering open house, then asked if I'd like to be one of Bill's college guides for the day. I was so excited to say yes. I first realized I was in trouble when one of Bill Nye's assistants showed up early to debrief us. He told us to not take anything Bill says personally, and that Bill is generally and to everyone. Bill Nye showed up very late and very drunk, and he refused to do the full science presentation he had been contracted to do. Even though he had been paid for the full hour, he argued loudly that he wouldn't do more than 15 minutes. Bill made a few nasty comments about women in science towards me, insinuating that I was in astronomy just to find a husband. Then he started getting aggressively mean towards the young kids who were excited to see him. Eventually, he ended up screaming at a 5-year-old to off while mic'd up in front of an entire gymnasium of people. At that point, college officials asked Bill to leave even though he'd been there for only a short time. To this day, I'm honestly shocked at how many people still love and idolize Bill Nye, as I've heard so many similar Bill Nyes stories over the years. Story 35. I worked at a venue that sometimes had comedy shows with decent comedians. The owners and staff were so thrilled to have Dustin Diamond headlining one night, a bunch of them showed up to meet him. He was a huge dick to everyone, including the owners. His set was mostly him making fun of the venue, with the owners in the front row. He acted like he was just too good to be around us, and aside from the occasional chuckle, nobody really laughed at his material. After his set, Dustin made his rounds through every female staff server on my staff and asked them outright if they wanted to come back to his hotel room to bang. Nobody was a fan of his after that night. Story 36. I saw Nick Offerman do a show at a theater with his wife Megan, followed by a book signing afterward. So the show ended fairly late, and it was a theater full of people waiting in line to get a book signed, so it was obviously going to take a long while. Nick was the best. He chatted with everyone, didn't rush anyone along, stayed until after midnight to make sure he talked to everybody and got them a book. About halfway through the line, he recognized a couple ladies and brought them out. He announced something like, "Sorry everyone, I just need to stop for a moment because these two are royalty. This is so-and-so. They did the wardrobe for me on Parks and Rec, and I haven't seen them since," and shared some brief memories of them working together. The ladies were so excited he remembered them and made them feel extra special. I'm glad Nick lived up to and exceed my expectations. Story 37. I got to do a mentor class under one of my photography heroes. Dude was so amazing, and even though my work was nothing like his, David Plowden, beautiful images, he was so kind and welcoming and talked about how photography isn't just one genre, and good is good, no matter the subject matter. I know I freaked him out a bit with mine, and he was old at that point, so his words meant a lot. I also got the chance to have my elopement portraits taken by a very famous photographer, built a new genre of wedding photos, and he gave my husband and I a ride to the location, and we talked about gaming. Super awesome, chill dude. I fangirled a little. He also stopped our session because mountain goats showed up, so he took some photos of them and was super excited about seeing them there. Story 38. Was running to a ferry on Vashon Island and ran straight into John Ratzenberger, mailman from Cheers, aka Ham from Toy Story. He knocked me down to the ground by mistake, and I banged my knee pretty bad. He made sure I was okay. This was about 30 years ago. I think I was 11 years old at the time. Story 39. I had been corresponding with the great American author, Joseph Heller, of Catch-22 fame. Too long a story to say why, but I worked in academia at the time. He contacted me to say he would be in Oxford, UK for a while, and would be very pleased to meet up face-to-face. Of course, I agreed. He was charming, funny, delightfully odd, and gracious. He signed all the copies of all his books for me, and I still have them. I was very sad when he died. A great man. Story 40. My little sister was a huge Usher fan back in the day. Had his posters up and all. She ran into him at the mall on an escalator. Long story short, he basically mushed her in the face and told her kick rocks. She promptly went home and removed every poster. We don't even mention his name around her. Story 41. I once found myself in a very difficult place in my professional life that was bleeding into my personal life. One of the big things that got me through it was one of my favorite YA authors' books, The King of Atolia, part of the Queen's Thief series. It really helped me wrap my mind around what I needed to do for myself and how to make my way out of the situation. I did after a lot of work and 3 or 4 rereadings of the book. A couple of months later, I was reflecting on it, and I sat down and wrote the author an email. I didn't go into great detail. I just told her that I'd been having a tough time, and her book had helped me through it so much. About 2 or 3 months later, I got email back from her. She was so gracious and thankful and obviously had actually read my email. It wasn't a long email, and it didn't need to be. It was just great. So go read The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. Story 42. I asked David Suzuki a question in earnest about whether we, professionals at a conference, might be able to better bend the wills of corporations to act sustainably by framing arguments in favor of sustainable measures in terms of dollar value propositions. This has been impossible historically, but a relatively new school of economics called non-market valuation actually assigns dollar values to intangible goods like clean air, a stream with an intact biodiverse ecosystem, etc. It's neat. I was really excited to see David Suzuki speak, and I'd considered him one of my heroes until he aggressively told me that my discipline is a sham and that my idea is stupid in front of a packed audience of God knows how many people. Story 43. Not my story, but my aunt's. She was attending Buffalo State College in the 80s and was at the same bar as Rick James. She was a big fan of his at the time and walked up to him to tell him so, but before she could get a word out of her mouth, Rick waved her away and said, "Get out of here, baby, you ain't pretty enough." Most believable and on-brand Rick James story. She was very upset at the interaction. Story 44. As a lifelong fan of Bernard Cribbins, I was pretty excited to get to sit front row at a quanda he did at Comic-Con. He did not disappoint and lived up to my expectations. And now I have the valuable insight that hip surgery is much easier to get over than knee surgery. I now take much better care of my knees. Thanks, Bernard. Story 45. I met Robin Williams while working on a comedy show, and he couldn't have been more kind and friendly. With me gushing about how I wore out his first comedy album on vinyl and had to buy another one, he said, "Your parents must have been pretty cool. Most of them would pantomimes breaking a record over his knee." After the first day of the shoot, all us camera operators had to be told to back off Robin because we all wanted to be around him, and we had too much footage of him already. He spent a lot of time talking to fellow legend Mort Saul. Story 46. Went to see James Blake in Philly. On the way to the show, we spotted him at a small coffee shop, stopped in to say we were going to see him, and he was so happy, took a pic with us. At the time, me and my buddies and I were running a small clothing company, high school biz, nothing big. We told James and his producer we had free shirts in our car. The car was parked in a dingy Philly alleyway. James and his producer freaking trusted us, came to the car, and we gave them shirts. Show starts. James walks out wearing our shirt and proceeds to shout out the two lovely lads who gave us these shirts and shouted out the name of our company. I never screamed so loud. It was amazing. Story 47. Met Misha Collins in a photo op at a con as a teen. I'd bought the photo op for my best friend at the time as a birthday present, and I'd been telling her all day how I was going to tell her happy birthday when we got to the front of the line so that Misha would say it to her as well. I did do it, and he did wish her a happy birthday, but he also looked directly at me and said, "Your acting skills need a little work." He was beyond kind to us and everyone else, but good God, as an awkward, homeschooled 15-ish-year-old, I could have just about died on the spot from the embarrassment. Story 48. Not mine, but an older friend's, Bill. He grew up in PA, and one of his buddies started dating Mr. Rogers' daughter. They went over to pick her up one night, and Bill got to meet that gem of a human. He hadn't put 2 plus 2 together. Rogers was a rather common last name, but when his friend asked if he wanted to come inside to meet him, Bill went from confused to, "Are you serious?" so fast and jumped out of the car. As I'm sure you can guess, Mr. Rogers was super friendly, soft-spoken but hilarious, and just fantastic. I've always been jealous of that one. Story 49. Weird Al Yankovic. Before you light your pitchforks, hear me out. A friend wanted to meet Weird Al at a local convention in August. I got there early and saved him a spot. We got to the table, and the entire interaction between Al and my friend was about 45 seconds. Just a quick hello, sign the autograph photo, thanks, bye. I said, "Thanks, Al, nice to meet you." And he didn't even look at me or respond. I don't blame Al. The lines were extremely long. They have had difficulties with people standing in line for 7+ hours, the convention closing, and not getting to meet the celebrity. A few years ago, that happened with Meatloaf, so they booked him to come back for the next show. He was not able to attend. As a result, they try to keep the lines moving. Unfortunately, that means that your $100 for an autograph will only buy you less than a minute with the person. I think he didn't respond to me because I was wearing a costume with a full head covering, disgruntled goat from The Simpsons, so he didn't hear me. TLDR, disappointing meeting with Weird Al, but it was more the fault of conline management and a voice-muffling costume head than Al himself. Story 50, I've got a ton. I used to be a security guard escort for big celebrities at film festivals. I still feel like I can't name specifically due to being on the job when this all happened, but I will say that when it comes to celebrities, especially bigger names, Most of them are S. I've seen them smile for cameras on the carpet and answer questions to fans or media. Then literally the second they enter the elevator or go behind a closed door, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. They talk about whoever interviewed them, whoever asked them for autographs, whoever is not waiting on them hand and foot. It's almost like they're exhausted from having to keep up a certain appearance anytime they're in public, that whenever they get a moment to not wear it, it's a relief to be their true self, and they're entitled to act that way because of it. Story 51. I was studying graphic design in college, and a professor from another university in town had gotten Paula Scher to agree to give a guest lecture via Skype. It was a big deal, as she's a very esteemed designer and was in fact someone we had learned about in our history of design curriculum. So the professor extended invitations to graphic design students from all the other local universities as well. I went with a classmate of mine. As they were getting the Skype call set up and opening the discussion, the professor was chatting with Paula about a project he had his students working on. I guess they had been studying her work, and he had them all screen print shirts with designs inspired by the work of Paula Scher. I don't remember the details, but it was something like that. As part of the project, he apparently then mailed her the shirts his students made, and he was asking if she had received all the shirts. And this woman, whom everyone in the room, including that professor, idolized to some degree, said that she gets so much mail that usually her assistants will open it for her, and probably her cleaning lady took the shirts to cut up into cleaning rags. I couldn't believe those words had actually come out of her mouth. My classmate and I turned to each other like, "Did you also hear that, or am I imagining things?" It was so awkward. I mean, imagine being one of those students, being told your work was probably scrubbing the floors. Imagine being the professor, who clearly had some line of correspondence with this woman and must have imagined she'd be open to providing some kind of mentorship or collegiality with his students. The lecture continued, and I suppose it was pretty good, but I just could not get past that. She couldn't have at least pretended she saw the shirts and given some generic encouragement about continuing to study and make things. Oh my God. Story 52. I met the original English voice actors for Goku, Vegeta, Krillin, and Android 18 for autographs at a convention like 24 years ago. Krillin and Vegeta's actors were fun and friendly. Goku's actor made fun of my name when I introduced myself. He then made fun of it with his autograph. He then proceeded to eye uncomfortably Android 18's actress and made a comment when she got up to leave the table. He was kinda a huge dick. I've been a Vegeta fan ever since, plus he's a better father.